The scent of blood, a feral hunger, and the chilling realization that the monster under the bed might just be looking back from the mirror. For centuries, the terror of men turning into beasts, of the moon's madness driving them to gnaw flesh and spill blood, has haunted our collective nightmares. But what if I told you these weren't just stories conjured from the dark? Welcome, and prepare to delve into the primal roots of the werewolf legend. Tonight, we hunt the truth behind lycanthropy, tracing its origins from ancient rites to the chilling confessions of the accused. The night air hung thick and heavy, a suffocating blanket over the ancient forests of Europe. Somewhere in the impenetrable darkness, a guttural howl ripped through the silence, a sound that spoke of primal hunger, of something ancient and terrifying stirring in the human soul. It was a sound that would echo through centuries, a chilling testament to a fear as old as humanity itself. Imagine a lone shepherd, tending his flock under a sliver of moon. The air is still, too still. Suddenly, a shadow detaches itself from the trees, impossibly tall, unnaturally gaunt, with eyes that gleam with a predatory fire. It doesn't walk, it lurches, a grotesque parody of man. And then it attacks. Not just the sheep, but the shepherd himself. A frenzied, brutal assault that leaves him a mangled ruin, his screams swallowed by the insatiable maw of the beast. This is not a scene from a modern horror film. This is the very real terror that haunted the nightmares of our ancestors, the seed from which the legend of the werewolf would grow. For millennia, humanity has grappled with the beast within, the duality of our nature. We are creatures of reason, of civilization, yet beneath the veneer of society, a wild, untamed force slumbers. And in the darkest corners of the world, in the deepest recesses of the human psyche, that force could, and sometimes did, erupt. But where did this terror truly begin? Was it merely the product of overactive imaginations, fueled by the flickering light of campfires and the rustling of unseen things in the undergrowth? Or was there something more concrete, something tangible, that gave rise to these terrifying tales? Across the vast expanse of ancient Eurasia, from the windswept steppes to the dense woodlands, similar stories began to emerge. Tales of men who walked on two legs, yet moved with the speed and ferocity of wolves. Men who, under the pale glow of the moon, shed their human guise and embraced a savage, animalistic existence. These weren't isolated incidents, they were recurring motifs, woven into the very fabric of folklore. Consider the ancient Greeks, a civilization steeped in myth and legend. Even they spoke of such transformations. Herodotus, the father of history, recounts a tale of the Neuri, a tribe dwelling in the north, who, he claimed, turned into wolves for a few days each year before reverting to their human form. He didn't dismiss it outright. He presented it as fact, a curious phenomenon of a distant people. And the Romans, no strangers to the supernatural, documented similar beliefs. Pliny the Elder, in his encyclopedic natural history, mentions an ancient belief that men could be transformed into wolves, and that if one tasted human flesh, they would remain a wolf forever. These were not the fanciful ramblings of children, these were the observations and beliefs of learned men, of a society grappling with the inexplicable. These early accounts, scattered across time and geography, point to a shared, deeply ingrained human anxiety. An anxiety about the wilderness, about the blurring of lines between man and animal, and perhaps most disturbingly, about the potential for savagery that lies dormant within us all. But how did these whispers of transformation, these primal fears, coalesce into the enduring legend of the werewolf? What events, what beliefs, what societal pressures forged this terrifying figure that continues to stalk our imaginations to this day? And what does the enduring power of the werewolf tell us about ourselves, even now? For millennia, humanity has looked to the natural world, seeking meaning in its patterns, its beauty, and its terrifying power. And for as long as we have lived alongside them, wolves have occupied a unique space in our imagination. Majestic predators, symbols of the wild, they were also a tangible threat to ancient communities. The wilderness, after all, was not a place of comfort. It was a realm of darkness, where the familiar could transform in an instant. In the shadowed corners of early human existence, between the flickering firelight of the village and the impenetrable darkness of the forest, fear took root. It was a fear born of the unknown, of sounds that couldn't be placed, of shadows that moved with unnatural speed. And sometimes, that fear had a shape, the shape of a wolf. Across cultures, from the windswept plains of Eurasia to the dense forests of Anatolia, whispers began to circulate. Tales of men who were not entirely men, of beings who walked the line between human and beast. These were not just stories of encountering dangerous animals. These were accounts of something far more unsettling. The ancient Greeks, with their rich tapestry of myth and legend, offer some of the earliest compelling glimpses. Consider the tale of Lycaon, the king of Arcadia. According to the historian Pausanias, Lycaon, in his impiety, tested Zeus himself, serving him human flesh. As punishment for this horrific act, Zeus transformed Lycaon into a wolf. But this was no mere metamorphosis. The legend suggested that any man who ate of human flesh could share in Lycaon's curse, becoming a wolf for a period of time, only to resume his human form later. These early accounts, passed down through oral tradition and later inscribed on stone and papyrus, speak of a profound anxiety. It was the fear of losing one's humanity, of being consumed by primal urges that lay just beneath the surface. The wolf, a creature of the wild, a hunter, became the potent symbol of this terrifying descent. The conflict was becoming clear. It was the eternal struggle between civilization and the untamed wilderness, between the rational mind and the beast within. But these were not just abstract fears. The stakes were terrifyingly real. These were not imagined monsters in distant lands. These were whispers from the very edge of the known world, suggesting that the enemy, the other, could be one of us. A neighbor, a friend, or even yourself. In the shadowed corners of the ancient world, where the lines between man and beast, myth and reality, blurred into a single, terrifying tapestry, the concept of the werewolf took root. We've traced its primal whispers in the wild howls of the earth, but now, we delve into a more deliberate, more terrifying origin, the realm of the divine. Imagine Greece, millennia ago. A world teeming with gods and goddesses, capricious and powerful, their influence felt in every rustle of the olive grove, every storm that swept across the Aegean. It was a world where divine favor could elevate a mortal to godhood, but divine displeasure, well, that could unleash horrors far worse than any earthly predator. The legend of Lycaon, king of Arcadia, is a chilling testament to this. A man, or so the story goes, who dared to test the very limits of the gods. He was a pious king, revered by his people, but beneath the veneer of devotion, a darkness festered. He was said to have offered human sacrifice to Zeus, the king of the gods. Some accounts say he served up the flesh of a young boy, a feast for the divine, a blasphemous act designed to probe the omnipotence of Zeus. Whether born of hubris, madness, or some ancient, twisted ritual, Lycaon's transgression was unforgivable. Ovid, the Roman poet, paints a vivid, horrifying picture of the punishment. He rose from his throne, the thunder rolling in his hand, and struck the earth with lightning. Lycaon's palace was reduced to ashes. The earth opened its maw and plunged him into the infernal regions. But that wasn't the end of his torment. Zeus, in his wrath, transformed Lycaon himself. His human form contorted, his features warped, his senses sharpened into a primal ferocity. He became the first werewolf, condemned to roam the earth, forever driven by a bloodlust he could not control, a horrifying echo of his own monstrous act. This wasn't just a tale of divine retribution, it was a warning. It spoke of the terrifying power of the gods and the dire consequences of challenging them, of crossing sacred boundaries. But the myths went further. They hinted at practices, ancient rites and rituals that could evoke this terrifying transformation. In some ancient cultures, particularly those with strong shamanistic traditions, the act of shape-shifting, of embodying an animal spirit, was a sacred practice. Shamans would enter trance states, believing they could commune with animal spirits, even adopt their forms to gain their strength, their speed, their ferocity. These were not necessarily acts of malice, but of spiritual seeking. However, in times of conflict, or when desperation set in, these rituals could take a darker turn. Imagine a desperate warrior tribe, facing annihilation. Could they, in their darkest hour, turn to forbidden rituals, seeking the raw power of the wolf to overcome their enemies? Could they invoke the spirit of the beast through blood, through chanting, through a desperate communion with the wild? The whispers suggest they could. These were not mere stories, they were woven into the fabric of belief. The fear of transforming into a beast was not just a personal terror, but a societal one. It implied a loss of control, a descent into savagery that threatened the very order of civilization. And as these tales spread, as the divine curses and ancient rituals were recounted, the image of the werewolf grew more potent, more terrifying, more deeply embedded in the human psyche. The stakes were rising. The beast within was no longer just a metaphor, it was a divine punishment, a ritualistic invocation, a terrifying possibility lurking just beneath the surface of humanity. And in the coming centuries, this primal fear would find an even more chilling expression, one that would forever link the werewolf to the darkest corners of human experience. For centuries, the whispers of the wild had been just that, whispers. Tales shared around crackling fires, fragments of fear woven into the fabric of ancient societies. But as we move deeper into the shadowed corners of human history, these whispers begin to coalesce, to sharpen, to take on a terrifying form. The fear of the wolf, the primal dread of the beast within, is starting to sink its fangs into the nascent stages of what we would come to recognize as werewolf legends. In the cradle of civilization, where gods and monsters walked hand in hand, the lines between human and animal were already blurred. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest surviving works of literature, speaks of Ishtar, a goddess who, angered by the hero, transforms her former lover into a wolf. This isn't a curse of madness, but a literal, physical transformation, a divine punishment that sets a precedent. But these were divine interventions, the whims of powerful deities. What happens when the transformation is not a god's decree, but a human affliction? The earliest hints of such a terrifying reality emerge from the lands of ancient Greece. Plato, the philosopher, writing centuries after the events he describes, recounts the legend of King Lycaon of Arcadia. Lycaon, a man infamous for his impiety and cruelty, dared to test the omniscience of Zeus. He offered the god a meal of human flesh, a grotesque act of defiance. In his wrath, Zeus unleashed his fury. Ovid, the Roman poet, would later elaborate on this chilling tale, painting a vivid picture of Lycaon's agonizing metamorphosis. Ovid writes, "He falls upon his knees, and presently begins to snarl, and hurries to the woods. His garments become a shaggy hairy coat, his legs are changed to forelegs, his arms to forearms. He is wolf." This wasn't just a story, it was a foundational myth, a narrative that cemented the idea of a human being irrevocably turned into a wolf, driven by a savage hunger. These tales, however, were often bound to divine retribution or specific geographical locations. The terror was contained, a cautionary fable. But what if the transformation was not a supernatural punishment, but a condition, a disease, a hereditary curse? What if the boundary between human and beast was not a divine decree, but a fragile membrane, easily broken? As the Roman Empire waned and Europe plunged into a darker, more superstitious age, the legends began to shift. The wolf was no longer just a symbol of divine wrath, it was a tangible threat lurking in the deepest forests, a predator that stalked the edges of human settlements. And with it, the fear of turning into one of them began to fester. The stage was being set for a terrifying new chapter. The fear was no longer just of being preyed upon by wolves, but of becoming the wolf. And in the isolated villages of medieval Europe, a new kind of terror was about to be born, a terror that would haunt the collective imagination for centuries to come. But this was just the beginning. The true horror, the chilling implications of this burgeoning myth, were yet to fully reveal themselves. For centuries, the werewolf was a creature of the wild. A primal force that stalked the edges of civilization, embodying humanity's deepest fears of the untamed. But as the shadows of the Middle Ages began to recede, and a new era of reason dawned, something began to shift. The image of the werewolf, much like the societies that conceived it, was changing. The medieval mind saw the werewolf as a tangible threat, a literal embodiment of sin and savagery. Accusations of lycanthropy were often tied to heresy and demonic pacts. If you were accused of being a werewolf, you were a sinner, an outcast, a danger to the flock. This was a world where the spiritual and the physical were inextricably linked, and the wolfman was a monstrous testament to that dangerous fusion. But as the Renaissance bloomed, and a new emphasis was placed on humanism and individual reason, the understanding of the world began to fracture. Science, though still nascent, began to challenge the purely supernatural explanations for phenomena. And with this shift, the werewolf too began to evolve. The focus started to move away from the devilish pact and towards the physical. Could this transformation be explained by something internal? Something within the human body itself? This was a profound shift, a crack in the edifice of pure superstition. Scholars and physicians began to propose more earthly explanations. They spoke of melancholia, of fevers, of strange humors that could drive a man to believe he was a wolf, or even, in his delusion, act like one. The esteemed physician Johann Weyer, in his De Prestigiis Daemonum from the 16th century, argued that many accused witches and werewolves were simply suffering from mental illness, driven mad by delusion or illness. He saw them not as agents of the devil, but as pitiable sufferers. This was a radical idea for its time. It suggested that the monstrous might not be outside of us, but within us. That the beast could be a sickness of the mind, rather than a curse from hell. This de-demonization, however, was a double-edged sword. While it offered a sliver of hope for the accused, it also began to paint a more complex, and perhaps more chilling, picture of the werewolf. If the werewolf wasn't purely supernatural, then perhaps it was a perversion of nature. A savage lurking beneath the veneer of civilization, a reminder of the primal instincts that reason struggled to contain. The fear didn't disappear. It simply found a new, more unsettling home. It moved from the realm of the demonic to the realm of the disturbed. The stakes were rising. The werewolf was no longer just an external enemy to be hunted and vanquished. It was becoming a reflection. A mirror held up to humanity's own capacity for darkness, for madness, for the beast that lurked within. And as this new understanding took root, the question became not just how to defeat the werewolf, but who might be one. The line between hunter and hunted, between human and monster, was beginning to blur in ways no one could have imagined. The whispers of the wild had always been a presence in the human psyche. But as Europe plunged deeper into the medieval era, a new, darker fear began to take root, intertwining the ancient beast with something far more sinister. The wolf, once a symbol of pagan power or a primal threat, was now being recast in a chilling new light. The Church, ever vigilant against the resurgence of old ways and the perceived incursions of evil, began to view lycanthropy not as a curse of nature, but as a deliberate act of malevolence. This was no longer just about a man turning into a wolf, it was about a pact, a perversion of the divine order. Imagine the scene, flickering candlelight in a stone-walled chamber, the air thick with the scent of dried herbs and something acrid, metallic. A figure hunched over a crude table, their face etched with a mixture of desperation and a chilling resolve. This was the world of the hedge witch, the village wise woman, those who still held on to the ancient knowledge of plants and their potent properties. And in the eyes of the Church, these women were not healers, but agents of the devil. The legal and theological texts of the time began to reflect this terrifying fusion of magic and damnation. The Malleus Maleficarum, the infamous hammer of witches, though written later, captured the prevailing sentiment. It declared that witches, through their unholy communion with demons, could indeed gain the power to transform themselves and others into wolves. The belief wasn't just limited to folklore, it was being codified, weaponized. Consider the accusations. Peasants, driven by fear and suspicion, pointed fingers at those who lived on the fringes, the solitary women, the healers who sometimes failed, the men who seemed different. They spoke of darkened rituals performed under the new moon, of strange brews concocted from graveyard soil and the blood of unbaptized children. These weren't just fanciful tales, these were the testimonies that condemned people to the flames. The legend of the werewolf became entangled with the burgeoning wave of witch trials. The ability to shapeshift, once a sign of raw, untamed power in ancient myths, was now seen as a demonic gift, a tool for the devil's agents to roam the night, sowing terror and devouring souls as readily as flesh. The wolf was no longer just an animal, it was a manifestation of pure evil, a beast summoned by dark magic. And the consequences of such accusations were horrific. The penalty for witchcraft, and by extension, for being a werewolf, was death. The pyre awaited. This wasn't a game of make-believe, it was a deadly reality for countless individuals who found themselves caught in the web of suspicion and religious fervor. The stakes, for those accused, had never been higher. Their very lives, their reputations, their very humanity, were on the chopping block. But what if the pact wasn't always with the devil? What if some believed they were drawing power from something far older, something predating even the church's pronouncements? What if the transformation wasn't a curse, but a chosen path, a desperate bid for survival or power in a world that offered little of either? The line between witchcraft and werewolfism was blurring, and with it, the very definition of humanity itself was being called into question. The question that loomed, as the fires of persecution began to burn brighter, was this: who truly held the power, the witch, the wolf, or the fear that created them both? The medieval world was a place of deep faith and deep fear. For centuries, tales of men turning into wolves, of creatures that stalked the forests and preyed on the innocent, had been woven into the fabric of folklore. But as the centuries wore on, these stories began to shift. What was once a whisper in the dark, a cautionary tale told around the hearth, was about to erupt into a chilling reality. Across Europe, a new kind of terror began to take hold. It wasn't just the fear of the wild animal anymore, it was the fear of the neighbor, the friend, the stranger who might be something far more sinister. The concept of lycanthropy, the belief that humans could transform into wolves, was no longer confined to myth. It was becoming an accusation, a weapon, and for many, a death sentence. Imagine the scene: a small village in France, perhaps the Loire Valley, sometime in the 16th century. The air is thick with suspicion. A child has been found mauled, or a flock of sheep savagely slaughtered. The villagers, their faces etched with fear and a desperate need for answers, look for a scapegoat. And often, their gaze falls upon the outsider, the one who acts strangely, the one who lives alone, the one accused of witchcraft. This was the chilling reality of the witch trials, and lycanthropy became a potent, terrifying charge within them. The legal systems of the time, ill-equipped to distinguish between folklore and fabrication, began to record confessions of shapeshifting. These weren't always willing admissions. Under the brutal methods of interrogation, Innocent men and women, terrified and exhausted, would say anything to make the pain stop. They confessed to meeting devils in the woods, to donning wolf skins, to feasting on human flesh. One such confession, recorded in the annals of the time, speaks of a man named Jean Grany. He was a young man, accused in the Landes region of France in the late 16th century. He claimed to have made a pact with the devil, to have received a wolf skin that allowed him to transform. He spoke of hunting with other werewolves, of devouring children. His testimony, detailed and horrifying, fueled the flames of paranoia. But what makes these trials so disturbing isn't just the confessions, but the way they were treated as fact. The learned jurists, the priests, the local authorities, they believed. They saw these confessions not as the product of torture or delusion, but as irrefutable proof of a tangible, monstrous evil. The writings of scholars like Nicholas Remy, a renowned witch hunter, catalogued countless cases of lycanthropy, solidifying the belief in demonically induced transformations. He wrote of werewolves who could change shape at will, who were masters of deception. This wasn't just superstition anymore. This was the law. People were being arrested, tortured, and executed for crimes they could not possibly have committed. The stakes were higher than ever. The fear of the wolf in the woods had transformed into the fear of the monster in our midst, and the courts, meant to protect the innocent, were now instruments of terror themselves. As the trials intensified, a darker, more complex layer of the werewolf myth began to emerge. It wasn't just about uncontrolled transformations driven by dark magic. It was about deliberate pacts, about a conscious choice to embrace the beast. And the authorities, armed with these horrifying confessions, began to believe they were on the verge of uncovering a vast, organized network of these diabolical creatures, a conspiracy lurking in the shadows, threatening the very foundations of society. But as they delved deeper, as they hunted for more evidence, they were about to stumble upon a revelation that would shake the very foundations of their understanding of this ancient fear. For centuries, tales of men transforming into wolves, of a primal hunger unleashed, had haunted the fringes of human civilization. But as the ancient world teetered on the edge of legend, a single, chilling story would rise to define the very essence of lycanthropy, forever etching its monstrous image into our collective consciousness. Our journey takes us to Arcadia, a rugged, mountainous land in the heart of Greece. Here, amidst wild forests and isolated villages, lived a king whose name would become synonymous with the wolf itself, Lycaon. He was not just any ruler, he was a figure of immense power, credited with introducing laws and civilization to his people. But beneath the veneer of kingship, a darkness festered, a profound disrespect for the divine. The ancient Greeks, deeply attuned to the gods, understood the delicate balance between mortal and divine. And Lycaon, it is said, shattered that balance. Driven by an arrogance that bordered on madness, he dared to test the very limits of heavenly tolerance. The supreme god, Zeus himself, decided to visit Lycaon, disguised as a humble traveler. It was a test, a chance for the king to prove his piety. But Lycaon, the story goes, saw an opportunity not for devotion, but for a gruesome experiment. He harbored a chilling suspicion: were the gods truly all-knowing? Could they discern the divine from the mortal, even when presented with the most horrific evidence. To find out, Lycaon committed an act so unspeakable, so blasphemous, that it echoed through the halls of Olympus. He murdered a young boy, a guest in his own home, and served his flesh to the gods at a banquet. A ghastly feast designed to expose the gods, or perhaps, to appease some darker, hidden hunger within himself. The deception was revealed. The divine fury, unleashed. Zeus, enraged beyond measure by this ultimate betrayal and transgression, descended upon Lycaon. The sky split with thunder, the earth shook. The gods do not suffer such insults lightly. And in that moment of divine retribution, Lycaon's punishment was not swift death, but an eternal, agonizing curse. His own monstrous act, his descent into savagery, was to be reflected in his very being. He was transformed, his human form ripped away, replaced by the beast he had so readily embraced in his heart. He became the first werewolf. Lycaon the king, now Lycaon the wolf, condemned to roam the wilds, forever driven by the same bloodlust that had consumed him. The legend of King Lycaon became more than just a myth, it was a terrifying warning, a potent symbol of the thin line between humanity and the beast, a line that, once crossed, could lead to an eternal damnation. But this was just the beginning. The seeds of fear, sown by Lycaon's tale, would grow, twisting and mutating, as the concept of lycanthropy began to spread, taking root in the darkest corners of human imagination, and threatening to consume the very souls of men. For centuries, the werewolf howl echoed through folklore, a chilling testament to humanity's primal fears. But as the modern world dawned, armed with reason and the promise of science, a new kind of hunt began. Not for beasts of fur and fang, but for the very roots of the legend. The Age of Enlightenment, a beacon of rational thought, began to dissect the werewolf. Was this creature of midnight a tangible threat, or something far more insidious, lurking within the human mind? Physicians, increasingly skeptical of supernatural explanations, turned their gaze inward, towards the messy, unpredictable landscape of human biology and psychology. In the hushed, often brutal, halls of asylums and hospitals, a new understanding of madness began to emerge. The term lycanthropy itself, once a descriptor of demonic possession, was re-examined. Could the delusion of being a wolf, the compulsive urge to howl or gnaw, be a symptom of a physical ailment, a derangement of the brain? Doctors like Johann Weyer in the 16th century, and later, those in the burgeoning fields of neurology and psychiatry, catalogued strange afflictions. They observed patients who believed themselves to be animals, their behavior mirroring the very creatures of legend. They spoke of melancholia, of fevers that twisted perception, and of the potent influence of suggestion and hysteria. The scientific lens, while offering explanations, also stripped away some of the terror, replacing supernatural dread with the stark reality of disease. The werewolf, in this new light, was not a demon's curse, but perhaps a symptom of epilepsy, of ergot poisoning from spoiled grain, or even of a profound psychological break. Yet, for those who lived in rural communities, plagued by rabies, wolf attacks, or the gnawing fear of the unknown, these scientific explanations offered little comfort. The old stories persisted, weaving themselves into the fabric of daily life, fueled by the very real dangers that prowled the night. And then came Darwin. His revolutionary theories of evolution, published in the mid-19th century, threw open a Pandora's box of questions about humanity's place in the natural world. If humans and animals shared a common ancestry, if the lines between species were not as rigid as once believed, could the ancient fear of metamorphosis, of the beast within, hold a new, unsettling resonance? The shadows of the past were not so easily dispelled. As science probed the mysteries of the mind and the origins of life, the werewolf myth proved remarkably resilient, adapting, morphing, and continuing to reflect our deepest anxieties about the wildness that lay dormant, perhaps, in us all. But what if the explanations, however rational, were missing a crucial piece of the puzzle? What if the legend was not just about delusion or disease, but about something far more ancient, far more deeply rooted in the human psyche? For centuries, the werewolf was a creature of the shadows, a whispered terror confined to the liminal spaces of folklore and the fevered imaginations of the afflicted. But as the modern world dawned, with its gaslight and its burgeoning scientific inquiry, something began to change. The monster, once a purely supernatural entity, was about to step out of the woods and onto a new stage, one illuminated by the flickering glow of a nascent medium, cinema. The early 20th century saw the werewolf myth enter an entirely new phase of evolution. No longer just a peasant's fear or a witch's curse, it became a canvas for exploring the darker impulses of humanity, amplified by the power of visual storytelling. Think of the early silent films, crude by today's standards, but potent in their ability to conjure primal fears. The lumbering beasts, the terrified villagers, these images, however primitive, tapped into something deeply unsettling. But it was in the mid-20th century, with the advent of sound and more sophisticated filmmaking techniques, that the werewolf truly became a cinematic icon. Lon Chaney Jr.'s portrayal in The Wolf Man in 1941 wasn't just a performance, it was a revelation. Here was a man, cursed by a silver-headed cane and a bite from a wolf, struggling with an internal battle between his humanity and the beast within. This wasn't just about a monster on the loose, it was about the monster inside us all. The film resonated because it gave the werewolf a tragic dimension. Larry Talbot wasn't a villain, he was a victim, desperately trying to control a force that consumed him. This internal conflict, this very human struggle against an uncontrollable, primal urge, struck a chord. It transformed the werewolf from a simple bogeyman into a complex figure, a metaphor for societal anxieties, for repressed desires, for the thin veneer of civilization that could so easily be stripped away. And as filmmaking technology advanced, so too did the visual horror. The practical effects, the ingenious makeup, the blurring lines between man and beast, each iteration became more visceral, more terrifying. The werewolf was no longer a shadowy figure, it was a tangible, monstrous presence, its transformations agonizingly depicted, its savagery brutally rendered. This was no longer just a story whispered around a campfire, this was a scream projected onto a vast screen, seen by millions. But this cinematic dominance brought a new kind of complication. As the werewolf became a pop culture phenomenon, the ancient, nuanced folklore began to be overshadowed. The intricate beliefs, the specific rituals, the regional variations, they were simplified, streamlined, often reduced to the core elements that worked best on screen, the moon, the bite, the transformation, the violence. The rich tapestry of human belief was being woven into a more uniform, more commercially viable fabric. And as the creature's image became ubiquitous, so too did the idea of lycanthropy itself. The ancient fear of transformation, once tied to specific curses and spiritual imbalances, began to morph. The scientific lens, which had initially sought to explain away lycanthropy as madness or delusion, started to offer its own, more chilling interpretations. What if the beast wasn't entirely supernatural? What if something biological, something deeply embedded in our DNA, was stirring? Because as cinema cemented the werewolf's place in the modern imagination, a new, unsettling possibility began to emerge from the shadows. Not just a tale of supernatural curse, but a hint, a whisper, of something far more primal. Something that might not require a full moon, or a witch's hex, to awaken. The stakes, it seemed, were about to get far more personal. For centuries, the image of the wolf lurking in the shadows, a creature both familiar and terrifying, has haunted the human imagination. We've sculpted it from fear, from folklore, from the very marrow of our anxieties. But the legend of the werewolf is more than just a spooky tale told around a campfire. It's a deeply ingrained echo in our collective consciousness, a primal resonance that speaks to something fundamental about who we are. We've traced its origins from the ancient rituals of the Near East, to the chilling accounts of Roman historians, to the grim pronouncements of medieval witch trials. We've seen how fear of the other, of madness, and of the untamed wilderness itself, all coalesced into this enduring myth. But why, after all this time, does the werewolf continue to grip our imaginations with such ferocity? Why does this ancient fear still howl in our dreams? The answer, perhaps, lies not in the supernatural, but in the deeply human. Consider the sheer terror of losing control. The idea that within the civilized veneer of humanity, a beast lies dormant, ready to break free. This fear of our own primal instincts, of the savagery we're capable of, is a constant undercurrent in human experience. The werewolf, in its most potent form, is a projection of that inner darkness. The medieval period, with its pervasive sense of sin and the ever-present threat of divine judgment, was fertile ground for such anxieties. When reason failed, and suffering was inexplicable, the wolf became a convenient scapegoat. The confessions extracted under torture, the pronouncements of guilt based on flimsy evidence, these weren't true accounts of transformation, but rather reflections of a society grappling with its own demons. Consider the words of Father Ludovicus, who in 1458 documented the case of Pierre Begot and Michel Eudat, men accused of lycanthropy. He wrote of their alleged shape-shifting, their pacts with the devil, their savaging of children. Yet, even in his detailed account, one can sense the desperation for an explanation, a tangible enemy to blame for the horrors of their time. But the myth transcends mere superstition. It speaks to the dual nature of humanity itself. We are creatures of reason and intellect, but also beings driven by instinct and emotion. The werewolf embodies this inherent duality, the civilized man torn asunder by the savage wolf. It's a potent metaphor for the internal struggles we all face, the constant negotiation between our higher selves and our baser desires. And in our modern world, where the wilderness has receded, and rationality often reigns supreme, the werewolf myth endures. It finds new life in our stories, our films, our art. It taps into a primal longing for the untamed, a fascination with the wildness that still slumbers beneath the surface of our ordered lives. It's the thrill of the forbidden, the allure of the monstrous, the eternal question of what truly lurks within us all. The echo in our blood, the ancient fear of the wolf, is perhaps the echo of our own wildness. It's the reminder that even in the most enlightened of times, the beast within is never truly vanquished. It waits, patient and silent, a testament to the enduring power of myth and the untamed heart of humanity.